Action. I came here from Tajikistan. How?
What else can you say?
Are you a Star Wars fan? I get paid for this. We can just make you turn into some kind of a creature from some distant planet.
Let's go. Jama, a concept artist born and raised in Tajikistan, now working with major and highly profitable Hollywood movies. Star Wars, Jurassic World, Aladdin, Fantastic Beasts, and many others.
And many other projects that I can't talk about just yet,
What we'd like to talk to you about is how you were there and ended up here. We're recording this interview in London. And how your profession actually works. That's what we wanted to discuss.
Cool. Sure. I'm up for it.
We're in London. You've been living here for 12 years already.
12 years, right.
Why here in London?
Well, it just, first of all, at the beginning, it was a job offer because my first offer actually was from Microsoft. But it didn't work out. I couldn't go there, I guess. That's it. And then the second offer was from London, from MPC. So I moved here, first as a freelancer and then gradually.
Okay, let's explain how the industry works for those who don't know. Say, let's imagine how in Hollywood they decided to make a new Jurassic Park movie, a remake or a sequel. And those who work on Jurassic Park, they don't do visual effects themselves. They are hiring in other companies. And such companies are stationed right here in London, in Soho. And there are different departments in such companies. Some of them are responsible for explosions, and some of them design, like, I don't know.
Some of them are modeling characters, and some of them are drawing textures.
And some people work on characters, and you used to work in such department.
Correction, not only characters, but also visual. Visual development is what it's called. So it can be characters, environments, I guess. It can be CGI, visual effects. For example, a Marvel movie. A character has some magical graphics that they create, right? And even such small details.
We're at your studio. In this room, it's inside your apartment. This is where it all happens.
Yes, mostly. Ready Player One. I did several sketches, and this one was the simplest, I guess. I probably made it in 5 minutes. You turn on symmetry, boom, boom, boom. It drew a little bit, turned off symmetry, and adjusted the legs there.
The torso looks like a generic rock t-shirt.
Yeah, so Steven Spielberg chose this one right away. Why? Because the brief for it was just like he was a villain, and then, not that I realized this later, I always knew that, for example, in the movies, unlike games, characters need to be readable really quickly, because for example, in a movie, you might see one character for a maximum of 2 minutes of screen time, right? So if he's too complicated, then you can't really read him. It's difficult, you know? That's why the skull on his chest, boom, we understand it right away. He's bad, moving on. And that's it. I made this one. Then, of course, they ask you to detail him further.
So you drew this?
Yeah. And you add some colors, add some metal, check out how it's all going to look, and then teeth, and so on. And then, of course, they ask for a close-up. And the only thing is that Steven Spielberg has some fat about horns. He constantly asked to remove the horns, I guess, but I guess I thought it looked better with horns, so I left him.
This is one of the movie's characters. You drew this character inspired by
my wife.
And she had no idea about that, right? How did this happen?
There's actually more to this story here. So I made this character with the skull there, and Steven Spielberg approved it. He said something like, very nice work, and this and that, and my self-esteem skyrocketed, The second character, Artemis, the brief was an alien heroine. You know what I mean? Like, she needs to be an alien, but at the same time attractive. I was like, okay, fine, I'm pretty fine, good at this, actually. I started drawing. I made the first version. Well, I just made a really alien-looking one right there, so she had some of the same eyes, but her mouth and her nose were a little bit different,
Not a human.
Yeah. Then I received some feedback, like, she's scary. And my self-esteem, along with my English visa, would just plummet into the abyss. You know what I mean? As I saw it.
You had a working visa back then.
Well, yeah, it's like Steven Spielberg told you that your work is crap, right? And I was like, and at the time, Paulina and I were still dating, so I was like, Paulina, can I just take a few pictures of you from different angles?
You didn't tell her why you needed them.
Yeah, so I told her that there was a project that I'm working on with Steven Spielberg, and I guess for one of the heroines, I need a reference. But that was a long time ago. To give you an idea, the movies you see tomorrow, right? I work on them like 4 years ago or so, and so on. For example, it was 2015, but the movie came out in 2018, so there's this big gap. And in the end, I took some photos that I needed to see, and I thought, like, maybe she has a long neck that'll improve this feeling that she's elegant and so on, right? Because she needed to look tough, that is, so she could, like, kick the others' butts, but at the same time, she had to be cute. So, in short, I took these photos. And of course, a reference is not when I take your face and insert it into some movie, but when you take inspiration. So, like, you look at the shape of the neck, maybe some facial features, etc. I do the same thing, but I slightly change the shapes, make the face a little bit different. And the feedback was, yes, that's it. That is my self-esteem without reaching the bottom. It starts to rise up again, I guess. And then here you see we refine her. That is, you can make the face and then like how she's going to look in the costume. And Ready Player One is generally a big reference to many pop culture things, right, from the 80s. That is, you see some clothes here for like some various 80s features, I guess. So let's make a motorcycle like an Akira. I worked on that, That's what I did for that movie.
Whoa.
In the end, when the movie comes out, we are usually given a premiere only for those who worked on the film, right? This is usually like a week or two before the main premiere, I guess.
Before the premiere.
Yeah. When we go there, well, it's always like a +1, and I invite Paulina, we go in, we watch it, and we come out, and Paulina says, damn, this heroine really reminds me of somebody. And I remind her of the situation. She was like, I guess she doesn't look a little bit like me. And she was pleased because I was inspired, and then I did it. But if you look at the shape of the neck, it's like purely Paulina's neck.
Just, when we came here, Paulina said hi when passing by, and she really looks like this character.
Well, there might be like an unsuccessful photo in terms of an angle and so on, but it doesn't matter. The most important thing is that there was such an experience, and it was really cool. For example, we have examples from Jurassic World 2, where I designed the main like a villain dinosaur. Well, you know what I mean, right? Like, yeah, you could say that. This concept art, these are the initial stages here when you need to convey not the anatomy, not some details, but like the character himself, the mood.
Like its mood.
Yeah. For example, here is the idea that he was going to be streamlined and black. And then they had this idea that over time, like a horse or a dog, he transitions into a gallop. He runs
its arms were long enough to gallop.
That is, he like evolved, so to speak. And then they gave him in the movie, like, because fingers, can also be like, well, if you animate them correctly, they convey the character. They really give it away. And there was this moment in the movie where he tries to touch the girl and so on. It is all this is laid down at the beginning of the film as a brief. Like, they tell you verbally, but they don't really know what it's going to look like.
You drew this in Photoshop. How long did it take?
It took me about a day or so, I guess.
All right. Moving on.
Right. The next step. The same dinosaur, but already ready for production. That is, with all the corrections, with all the animation corrections, so to speak, with all the design corrections, and so on. That is, you see, we added this yellow stripe right here, which I think like, this would be a really cool reference to venomous snakes and so on. That is, and just look, the trick is you try to do it so that the people understand. I've seen that somewhere, but at the same time from a different angle. Like, for example, scales. For example, we take a crocodile skin, just make it black. At the same time, a person can understand where. Well, intuitively they look at the image and they can build a connection, I guess. And when you watch a movie, it's more believable. That is, you believe more in the image, in like what you're looking at. You know what I mean? That's what it is.
We're standing at the National History Museum in London. This is an important point for us to understand how your profession works from time to time. Why is this place important?
Well, because at one point I was able to work on the movie Jurassic World, and then also on the series from BBC about dinosaurs. So a very important part before starting any project, I think, is specifically this profession, is to do some research, even minimal, right? And when you have such a museum next to you where practically everything is laid out for you, then then you can't really miss such an opportunity.
Just to make it clear, inside, right in the central gallery, I mean, I've been to this museum in the summer of 2022. Maybe it's different somehow. They had a huge dinosaur skeleton in the main hall. Is it still there?
It's not. No, they've changed the exhibit as of now. So now I think there's a big whale herring in there. But when I was working on the project, there was a big dinosaur in there.
So you simply went to the museum to observe?
Yeah. For example, with characters, it's very important to understand how bones work, I guess, because if you know how the skeleton works, more accurately its proportions, and how it's not composed, but like how it's put together, then you can basically just
put together.
Just really, so you can put any sort of a shell on top of this skeleton. It just make it more
make it a little more fantastic.
Yeah. And so that's why, for example, if you look at the sketches made for the first Star Wars, then you'll see that the artists who did it really understand how animals are structured, I think. And you know this. Otherwise, your images will be very unconvincing, I guess. You're looking at it and you think, I don't understand what this is, Plus, for example, an animator who took my model should be able to animate it further. But if your proportions are wrong, then your animation's not going to work. But for example, Jurassic World is, of course, more of a Hollywood product. That is, the dinosaurs, there are a little bit scarier, a little more evil, I think, and a little more carnivorous, and even... for example, the BBC project, A Prehistoric Planet, is more like a documentary, right? So there was a more scientific approach. That is, we worked directly with the scientists who said, no, you can't do that, and so on. Or suggested, and here should be some feathers. Some feathers, yeah, right? For example.
The previous one took a day. How long did it take you to get to the second picture?
It was 9 months.
9 months? You may think that only Jama works in this.
No.
He's not. It's done by a lot of people. Who are they?
I was just I'm making this picture, but I think in order for this character to be played inside of the movie, for it to move, animators then come in. Or rather, modelers come in who make the model, then the animators, moreover, they can work in different stages. That's the whole pipeline, When they, as if it were, you do everything in parallel. And in parallel, they also involve me. That is, for example, the modeler made this model, but then it's going to be this color. It may be gray, right? And for the scales to appear on it, then the texture artist needs to have a lot more time for this. So they send it to me, and I quickly sketch it there. Because again, my working time as a concept artist is much cheaper and more efficient. Because I spend much less time, because I draw static and they do animation. Just imagine someone had to animate these things like this porcupine right here, right? Someone had to animate that. So, for example, imagine here he has a pattern, so they don't really overlap with each other, and then it just takes a really long time. It's long. And this is an exceptional talent, really. I always take my hat off to the guys who do this. But in essence, modelers, animators, texture artists, then there were people who make a rig for the animators. What does the rig mean, right? These are the bones, right? It is inside each dinosaur there was a skeleton. But the skeleton is not enough because you also need to have some muscles on top of it. So just look. What's the difference? Muscles move under the skin. That is, if you just move the skin, it looks unnatural. Therefore, you have probably seen some breakdowns when a character is running and it seems to be all muscles because then there are some fat layers and,
Someone else does this.
This is done by separate people, and it's so painstakingly long. For example, I had this funny story when I told my old buddies that, it was the same conversation. I said, I came up with a dinosaur for Jurassic World. And they say, what do you mean came up with? They existed. And I said, no. The ones I came up with had their own character. Well, that was the wrong answer because then they laughed at me. How can animals have a character? So just look. For example, a dinosaur in Jurassic World,
They do have one.
Right. For example, his main reference for the director was Frankenstein. And our first reaction was, well, Frankenstein is made up of different parts, right?
Yeah.
So we took 3D assets, put together the legs of a raptor, the head from another one, the skin from another one, and he saw it all. It just, as the English, they say, he hated it, just hated our work. And then he really hated it. And then he came back to me with one reference right here. It was a picture from Bernie Wrightston's comics. It was this famous American comic artist, that did the comics. And there was just a picture where Frankenstein is sitting behind bars, huddled in the corner. It's just like pen and ink, drawn with ink. And with ink. And he said, I want the character to possess not the physiology of Frankenstein, but I guess rather his birth to this world. That is, he was tortured there. He was
similar background.
Yeah. So Well, first of all, he was a hybrid, I think, and he was created, kept in laboratories, just to show me what it looks like on an emotional level. In the end, I made a picture where he is also sitting in a cage in the corner, but there are like traces of claws all over the cage, just claws, right? And the guy is hitting with a taser in the side, to show that like. Therefore, in the film, like when he gets out into the open, he begins to be very aggressive because he had a bad childhood, so to speak.
Traumatized in the childhood.
And so you work on this. That is, the tools here are like, I mean, well, the art component should be there, but at the same time, you should also be a designer to be able to do such things.
You were born and raised in Dushanbe in an artistic family.
Yeah.
Your father was a ballet dancer?
Yeah.
And
my dad was a ballet dancer, and my mother was a lighting designer in a theater.
So how did you end up becoming a concept artist?
From the very beginning, I wanted to be a programmer because I liked computers. It is to sit at the computer to do something. I enrolled as a programmer in Turkey, but it didn't work out. How did it work out? I realized that I would really be expelled from the university because my grades were not so good. And I thought, okay, Jamal, so what else do you love? I loved planes insanely as a child. My dad brought us aviation magazines and so on. So, okay, what faculty is there? There was the aerospace faculty. I transferred there, and in the end...
Just to make sure, you were finishing studies in Turkey, right?
Yeah.
Was that a Turkish Tajikistani lycée?
No, the Tajik-Turkish Lyceum was in Tajikistan. They gave us a grant to those who graduated from school with good grades and so that we could be able to enroll in Turkey. And I was able to enroll in one of the best universities in Turkey.
In Ankara?
Yeah, Middle East Technical University. I enrolled there in computer, engineering, basically.
Did you study in Turkish?
No, in English. It's a very cool university. It's certified. And the only time this university came in handy for me, because when you study there, you get a diploma that is accredited here. When you apply for a visa, you just hand them this diploma, and that's it.
Am I right by saying that Aysultan studied in a similar school, although Turkish Kazakh one?
If he studied, then it's the same. So all these schools were opened by a religious movement in Turkey, which later then had conflicts with the Turkish government. So in 2016, do you remember there was this is how it worked. They opened lyceums, and they started opening them after the collapse of the Union all over the world, but mainly starting with the post-Soviet republics, right?
Yeah.
So just look, you can talk about whether or not this was right or wrong, I mean, given this coup later, right? But the thing is that we had a civil war there. People didn't go to school, but we had computers. We studied there, mathematics, teaching in English, etc. And this was a boarding school. We lived there for 5 days. So, sometimes stayed there for a whole week. And just imagine, we have a civil war going on, right? Who knows what else is happening on the streets? And I feel that I was really, really lucky to be there. Just first of all, I got the most important thing there, which was an education. The most golden. Well, this transitional age when...
Yeah.
And we had a really cool education. Plus, this later allowed me to move to Turkey because through these same schools, everyone enrolled in different universities, and I studied at Middle East Technical University.
You studied computer science there and left the course pretty soon.
I studied there for a year and a half, and I realized that my days at the uni are numbered, and then I transferred. So since there was a points-based system, that is the computer points, right? I mean...
Coding.
Yeah. So the coding faculty points requirements were much higher than the aerospace faculty. So I submitted my documents and they accepted me. But I thought that there would be more about projecting. That is how to create an airplane, because that's what I could do and what I love to do. Well, in my understanding, because I was interested in coming up with things, but it turned out to be all physics and mathematics, just quite tedious, and I barely graduated. I just never hide it. When people think oh wow, this is rocket science. It's really rocket science, but I barely finished my studies. And at the moment, as I realized that I liked design, in drawing, there were these subjects related to design, like designing a 2-engine military aircraft, which I passed with honors, and all the accompanying subjects. All of this together and so on, everything else that was based on mathematics and physics, I had a hard time with all of this. And I was already beginning to think, this problem with the fact that when you grow up and people expect something from you, right? Oh, you studied in college. When will you finally become a human? And you graduate from college and realize that you don't know anything. And this is the common painful topic. So that is in my case, I graduated thinking okay, what's next, right? And as it were, not knowing where to go.
So what did you do?
In the end, a rather funny situation happened because I missed, well, like when you like stay here not only for the second year, like it changes the faculty, have to, like, people that should stay for 4 years, and I had exceeded 4 years, right? In the end, because of this transition, I guess like I was asked to like move out of the dormitory because I didn't pay the money. And at the end, I was like, damn, what do? I have no money, no housing at all. I just got a job in an internet cafe, like as a simple administrator. Okay, so I played Counter-Strike there for a month, and moreover, I still played it pretty well. I played Counter-Strike there for a month, and this and that, and they paid some minimal money, and I had several subjects left to pass, right? I lived at that internet cafe. Fortunately, if you remember, there used to be these 19 monitors with such a good matrix, not the flat ones. And they had really good large boxes. I put these boxes on the floor, put my things on top of it, and then I slept in this internet cafe, and I realized that my life is going down the hill, just slowly but surely, really. I was a graduate, I had a diploma issued by a good university. I was, foreign languages, but I realized that I still didn't know what to do with the rest of my life. Right? See what I mean?
You were in your 20s.
I was 24. But in the end, I thought, okay, what can I learn here? And here I got hooked on Flash. Then there was Flash websites, animations, and so on. And I got interested. I started digging. Since I worked in an internet cafe, I had constant access to a computer, that is, right? I was constantly doing something. I wrote to an old friend in Istanbul, can you help me out? And he goes, yeah, of course I'll help you. Come to Istanbul. And I go there. And it turned out that he worked there in an office that issued visas for South Africa, and they needed an admin for the website. And since I was involved in Flash, I knew HTML a little bit. I got a job there, and there I already had a lot of time for me. I sat there day and night, and gradually I began to understand two things. So firstly, I like it. Secondly, I didn't have any financial goal to make any money. But at all, because if you like it, then you can, as it were, sit and do it endlessly. And gradually, this mechanism began to unfold because I started doing some things. Oh, I can make an animation. Then I started learning some Photoshop, drawings and things, I guess. But then my visa expired. My visa expired, and I had to return to Tajikistan.
To your brother's ads agency.
No, this was before that. And I got a job in a small office too. So, there was some miserable salary of $200 or something like that. But I had a computer. I did design, I used Flash. I remember making some websites there and so on. And I started working there. But of course, I as it were,
what was this company doing?
The company was providing internet services. Plus, in the early 2000s, there all offices did absolutely everything. They scan and whatnot, what's it called? Multi-profile, whatever it's named. And I started working there. And one day, my old friend from university called me, and he was just like, "Listen, we're opening an agency in Turkey." And I didn't even ask what was going to be there. He says, "We're opening an agency. Will you be our director?" And I said, "Sure, no problem. Buy me a ticket. I have no money at all." They brought me a ticket, and it turns out to be an industrial district. This is close to Syria. It's called the city of Kahramanmaraş. It was there because,
it's an industrial zone.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. So they were producing pans and teapots, all kinds of domestic utensils, And they were also producing clothing products in addition.
And you can provide them calligraphy services, for example,
each of them needed a rebranding, business cards, websites, etc. And I get there. Again, I never considered myself a designer in terms of graphic design, right? There was a graphic designer, and I hope that you get me. What I'm doing now is a little bit different. But I still had to deal with graphic design because at some point I started doing illustrations. That is, they asked me to draw there. There was a really dreary but funny story. A guy comes in, and if you're not familiar with my Turkish mentality, then they never say no. That is, if you come in, for example, to a kebab shop, right, and say, "Can I have some liver?" The guy says, "No problem, I'll bring it in right away." And you see how the guy runs across the street, runs to another restaurant, carries his sticks with him. Long story short, they don't say no at all, and it has its pros and cons. And the boss was just the perfect stereotype. He never said no, and we always had this conflict going. I say, "Dude, we can't do this." But just imagine, a client comes to us, and they make frying pans. Just like Tifal, Turkish production. And he comes to us and shows us a German catalog. And in this German catalog, there are these perfect photographs. Good photographs require a studio and cameras. And this is even before the digital age. It's quite impressive. And he asks our boss, "Can you do this?" And the boss says, "No problem, we will do it." He leaves, and I say, "How?" And he pats me on the shoulder, like, Jama, you can do this. And it just stuck with me. I just started this later on here and at the studio, I think, and everywhere else. But just look, here's what I did. Of course, we had the most basic camera with some minimal resolution, literally just took it in the kitchen, like did it in the kitchen, where everything is reflective, like everything is brown.
Including the bottom of the pen.
Including the bottom. Then I completely redrew it by hand in Photoshop, like there, and then like there wasn't even a tablet for me then, It was more like a vector illustration, but because I've been like making this for a really long time, it really looked like a photograph. And plus, it was without any errors at all, Well, for example, what distinguishes a good German frying pan from a Turkish copy? In the Turkish copy, the gap may be uneven, etc. And there should be a technology in place for manufacturing, And I drew it perfectly, not a speck of dust, not a single gap, not a single defect of any kind. And plus, the resolution was huge, really. I drew it on a large format that is like the pixel resolution. There were like 9 to 10,000 pixels, as I remember. That is, in fact, even if you stick it on a poster like A0 to A2, it really, like, it's gonna look good. And they liked it so much, and I was so angry because, damn it, I mean, I am an aerospace engineer, right? I want to draw some really cool spaceships and so on, right? Because I had already started making some sketches and so on, and I was just sitting there drawing pots. The funniest thing is that they liked it so much, and the boss was like, "Damn, dude, you're really cool." They brought me a whole catalog of their products, like the catalog that they had before. Then they brought the same pots with the pattern, where they brought like these matte stripes. There's like a pattern that had to be reflected, and then with the glass covering from it above like this, right? Then with Tefal, where there's like this matte black surface. In the end, I sit there and try to figure all of this out. Like, you need to understand how glass works, how it distorts. But I didn't know 3D then. Even if I knew there wasn't like 3D Max, I didn't know how to render it so beautifully as you can now. So now you just like throw metal into Blender and everything looks cool. And I did everything by hand. I figured out how matte surfaces work, how they work, then the lid. It looks like a lid, but there are small bumps on it, you know what I mean? So that when you take it, it doesn't slip out of your hand. All of these nuances, all of them. And there was one guy from Kyrgyzstan, like my good friend, he patted me on the shoulder and said, "Good job. You studied for 6 years as an aviation engineer, and now you're sitting here drawing some frying pans," and I was so angry. Imagine just how. But in the end, the guys often ask me, like I do a presentation or some sort of conference, and they ask me, "So, how did you learn to draw metal and glass so well?" And I always remember this story but it's been like so long to tell it in the context of a quick answer. But damn, I really started to understand how these things work there, because if you can draw metal, you can do the same thing later in 3D, because you understand which parameters you need to tweak. You tweak roughness, and you get a more blurred reflection, and so on. But I had to do everything by hand. And in the end, I made my boss buy a tablet for me because I had no money at all. And I sat there day and night just drawing and drawing and drawing.
So it all began with pens.
It all literally began with pens, yeah.
Are you 3D printing them?
Yes. So, why would I need to do this, right? So here it's very important to understand that everything that I do at some point has two developments of events, or like a hybrid development of events. Either it is built, made, like assembled in the real world, right? For like a dinosaur, they can assemble its head like as an animatronic, for example, like I came up with a castle. They can assemble the first floor of the castle in pine wood, which I talked about earlier, but they build sets. Or the second development of events, like they do this in CG, that is like on the computer. But that's it. So, but in any case, it's often important to print it out so that people have an understanding of the tangibility. That is, like when you see this, you as the director, like each director has their own like he sees with his own eyes and thinks like, okay, I can put my camera here and so on. So therefore, it's very important. It's like a very cool thing. Of course, then I don't print on industrial scales, right? I mainly have small ones, and they can print really big ones on the sets, And I can probably say, and maybe to my regret, I'm probably the first Tajik to get on set that is like where they build sets. So just imagine, right? Like you just walk through these big big hangars, and there's this scene called Agent 007. They filmed the movie there, and it was so interesting for me, right? So it doesn't matter where I'm from. What matters to me is that I got there on the first time, and it was so interesting to me. I wanted to get in every pavilion, and when you get in there, you have a pass. Like, you can basically go into any pavilion. So you just go in, and 100 prisoners are walking, right? And I think, like, what the hell is this movie? And then they go to the cafeteria, for example, on a break, and they're all dressed in like inmate clothes. And then you watch Paddington and realize, oh, I remember, I was there. Or you walk through a set, the set of Aladdin, right? And there are camels. You know, they're like shitting everywhere. There's such a terrible smell, and it's very interesting. But really, for example, I went into this pavilion where they assembled these animatronics, right? So what this means, I make a concept, then they make a mold for it, like not a 3D print, right? Because they need a mold, and then they make this out of plasticine, a special one, in full scale. That is, like, the head was really like this. This one here, like, it was that big. And then I always thought, for some reason, like, I saw animatronics in the movies, and they show them, right? I thought that they were hard, but they were actually made of, like, a really soft foam, because, like, inside of this animatronic is like this hollow mechanical frame that can be opened, right? I hope that makes sense to you. But like, at the same time, they like put these stickers everywhere, like, do not touch, because you can really just scratch it with your fingernail even. And on this set, there's this huge hangar, right? Because animatronics are being built there somewhere, like a T-Rex in full size. Like, I just freaked out, you guys. Imagine like a KMS truck, right? It's really that big.
Was it standing?
No, he was lying down, because in the movie he was locked in a container, and you walk around and you just freak out, you know? And there's like in this library, this dinosaur was supposed to attack Chris Pratt, the main character that's in the movie. But of course, there was no dinosaur. There's only the head, and even the head is heavy to run with. So they just had like a balloon with a picture of a head, like, attached to it, you know. And it just looked really funny, because like they just attached a picture to it. And the guy had a belt tied around his waist, and had two metal, like how do you call them? Like, not sticks, but
like rods or something.
Like two metal rods high up, so that the actors could refer to it for their eye line, right? But damn, they act so naturally. Like, now you understand what their talent is valid for. They can sit. Imagine, really, just 40 people are sitting there. Someone is holding a light. Someone is holding a camera. The reflected ball to collect all of these reflections and so on. And they communicate. And they often, like, come to set with children. And at this point, someone goes, action, and they do it.
Like, you're in a place where you cannot be scared because there are a lot of people, but you have to act out as if you're scared.
Yeah. Moreover, they do it so spontaneously. It's action. And this guy runs with them, and it's funny. It looks really funny. And he just, like, he keeps running around with this balloon. Plus, it's so heavy, so he's forced to do it like this. And they completely transform into a second, you know, like, you see what I mean? But therefore, for example, on set, this is awesome too, because like when you come, your pictures are printed there, because like by all means, Chris Pratt needs to know like how it's done to understand who we'll be fighting against, you know? That's how it's done.
Your story is a bit similar to another story. I mean, the journey from Tajikistan to English-speaking environment. That is a story of Andrew Duranich from Google. He reached out to Google and they offered him a job. You got a similar offer from Microsoft, right?
Look, yes. I started working with my brother. My brother supported me very much. I would like to pay tribute to him. He allowed me to do personal projects as well. That is like, well, if you had met me 10 years ago, right? First of all, I was just as obsessed with what I'm doing as I am now. But I also thought like everyone should do it. I would just say like, what you're doing, you could also do this too, you know? I wanted people around me to also get excited.
You were preaching.
Yeah, sort of. Like, it was perhaps not entirely, like, I don't think that it's wrong after all. Like, you can't just, like, tell yourself, like, Jama, don't do this, you know? But I understand that I was wrong in the sense that I expected the same participation from every person as I wanted. But, for example, in the studio, we did various, like, I offered them, let's draw. We covered the walls with our sketches, and so on. And we participated in a competition. There was this site called CGS Society. And there were competitions, for example, a video competition, and we shot it with the team. The guys did graphics, did the green screen. We had nothing. We couldn't do anything at all. We just watched how people did it, came up with things there. And someone held the light there. And there was this one really famous story about burning socks, because we did like in general, according to the script, the starship falls, and I needed two effects there. This is this is when it takes off, and the jet engine fires from below. Well, we simply made it from toilet aerosol, you just light it in the dark against the background, and it looks like an engine is starting, and then you just increase the speed and change the color from orange to blue. You just change the color, and it looks really good. This is, of course, not Hollywood level, but pretty good. And we had another moment then when the plane crashes and pieces fly off of it as if it's burning. We couldn't do it at all. In the end, we just shot it from below. And I lit the socks from the balcony. And when they fell, they burned, and we could overlay this over the ship, I guess, on top of it, And there's another really funny moment. I have this super talented nephew. He has a really awesome voice. And at the time, he played in a new metal band, sang rather. And I tell him, dude, record a voiceover for us. His English was at the level of, well, you understand, a person who has an ear in principle, can repeat certain things, but still, this is not you can't just speak in good English right away. But I had another friend who lives in the States, and I wrote a text. He recorded how it should sound, and my nephew, he dubbed the clip. And in the end, the English there, when you watch it now, well, I like the comments in English-speaking comments. Damn, such interesting English. This is probably how we will speak in the future. And people looked at it with a more positive angle there. It really, yeah. And anyways, we realized this clip. And we barely finished it. We needed some snow, and we didn't have snow. So you run out into the yard and just look at how the snow falls in the lamp.
Was it a short acting video, or what was the point?
Well, there actually was this thing called Dreamscape. Yeah. Being in a dream. So this could be interpreted in a different way. Someone did it with humor, and we got carried away there. We thought, what will happen after death? And they fall.
Was this a global contest?
It was okay. We won the best visual effects award.
Oh, with flying socks and aerosol.
Yes. Can you imagine? And damn, we didn't know and couldn't do anything. It seems to us that this is my life story. You can't do anything, you just learn, and then something will turn out for it. We made this clip, and we finished it. We uploaded it. We had such bad internet, like a stopwatch is running right in the last second. So we uploaded it. And won best special effects for this thing. We filmed these guys, and that is we had this main character. He was our DJ on the radio, and we dressed him up there and so on. There's a scene where there's flying in a plane, a switching, gaining speed, and it was just a box with a screwdriver that was sticking out of it. So really, damn. Now, of course, you look at all of this, and it's very cringy, but it was effort, right? I wanted to do something cool. The guys did too, and we gathered together, and we finished it up. And, of course, as a result, we had plenty of work, and I also had a lot of work. I drew backgrounds that is like a more complete work.
So you were in Tajikistan, and who were your customers?
Just look. It all started on the internet. There used to be forums where we posted, right? That is, you post your work bit by bit. But I think that I posted my first work somewhere around 2008. There was this period when I thought that I couldn't draw. I rarely took a break because, I couldn't do it. I didn't think about how light works. I mean the color. Take black and white pictures, right? Okay, there's clear more, but color and how it works. This is the next level. And I really had this moment where I thought just probably this isn't my thing, maybe it's better to focus on graphic design. But I still posted my work on these forums, right? And this work, the CG Society was then the largest site because, as you understand, it's Hub, I don't know, like YouTube among artists.
Nice.
But the way it recently closed, which is also sad, but there was a place to hang out. And here you understand that in addition to the fact that you need to be talented, you also need to participate somehow, to make your way into this community, because how can you make your way into this country where there was no industry? There was no industry in Tajikistan to this day. Neither gaming or maybe movies and cinemas, but at least there's no cinema that I work on. And that's why I participated in these contests. And then we literally it was the end, I think, of 2010, and then I think I think it was March or February 2011, an email comes to me from Microsoft. So that you understand, when you receive a letter from Microsoft, you usually scroll and you think like, oh, that's nothing, right?
Yeah, you told me like, your subscription has expired.
Your subscription is ended, that's it. In the end, it was a real letter with the job offer, and it was Sparth. This is Nicolas Bouvier, I think, if I'm afraid to mispronounce his last name. He is one of the coolest sci-fi artists of modern day, really. He later worked with Microsoft. Well, he's incredibly cool, right?
So he noticed you on this YouTube hub for artists.
Yeah, so what this email was about, Sparth liked your work, and he really wants to invite you to a new project. This was Halo 4. If you know, there's a series of games called Halo. First it was designed by Bungie, then Microsoft bought them out, and then this new studio was Microsoft, 343 Industries, and they invited artists out there. You understand, what this is for me, right? For me, it was some kind of I couldn't sleep at all. I mean, what? They just invited me. But they immediately made a remark. In the States, there's this cap on visas for talents.
Yeah, it has limitations. You cannot just...
but they were like, we're Microsoft. But at the end, they couldn't help us out. And, my world has collapsed. And then I realized that
they could only hire you next year, right?
Yeah, but you should understand that for concept artists, the projects are all the works that I will show you, the time that we work on a project is a maximum of 6 months in pre-production. It can stretch up to 3 years if you do post-production and pre-production as well. But these are short projects because they couldn't invite me any later because the project was already over.
So you didn't get the job?
I didn't, yeah.
And how did you end up in England?
In the end, his second email comes. This was September 2011. That is literally 6 months later, right? There used to be a site called DeviantArt. It still exists. I also posted on it in parallel, and DeviantArt is more like Behance for graphic designers, right? A site where everything is posted, like photographs, and artists hung out on there as well. And I received a message in Winbox on DeviantArt, and there was a pop-up window, like on Facebook, right? And I opened it up, and he registered only to send me a message specifically, right? And I'm talking about the producer of Moving Picture Company, in which I later found myself, NBC called for short. He writes to me, dude, we were advised your work, right? And here I should pay tribute. There was the really cool Swedish artist Andre Wallace, with whom we are now working on Star Wars. We simply just communicated with him. Not that he was my friend, but I wrote to him a couple of times and I say, Andre, I am your fan. And I even imitated him. That is he was a really big inspiration for me. And now he's still a really good guy. And I communicated with him and it turned out like this. He was offered a project and he said, I can't, but there is this guy from Tajikistan. He sent them to me. And so he writes to me, this producer guy, right? We want to work with you. And both at Microsoft and with them as well, my first question was not money. It was visa. You understand yourself. A person from the post-Soviet space always thinks that he will never be given a visa. At least it always seemed to be. And he even faltered a little bit. He says, we're a big company, don't worry about it. And okay, I say, let's apply for a visa because it was a project for 2 months. So they wanted me to come out to London, work with them, and that's it. And I was like, damn, okay. In the end, they wrote a letter of recommendation. I'm not sure if you remember that time, when you received an email from the Nigerian prince.
Yeah, one of your family members passed away in Nigeria and you're eligible for inheritance.
Transfer my money and we'll get you $2 million and that sort of thing. The letter said it. Jama's global talent. As if I'm not the most talented artist ever. Really, and if I read on this and I think, damn, they're going to think that definitely this is some kind of bullshit tool, just some sort of spam.
It looked like the letter about Nigerian prince.
And this letter of recommendation goes to the embassy. But since Dushanbe is in a small city, and my brother knew someone who knew the ambassador and so on in the end, because a week passes, no response at all. NPC writes to me, how's it going? Is there any news? Because the project is starting, I should be there. Nothing. Damn. And in the end, we somehow got through with the help of my brother. They say, yes, we received this letter, but we did not think that this was really something real. Can you imagine that, right? In the end, they say, let him come. And back then, I was published in several magazines. That is imagine like a local Vogue for concept artists. You know what I mean? Vogue sounds too pompous, I guess, but some kind of magazine in general. Several of my works were published in English.
In English.
So they printed it out and then they sent it to you. And really. And I went there. I took all of these magazines where it says at the bottom, Jama Jurabaev. And I went there and I talked to them, and they look at me like, okay, good, and gave me a visa. I had a business trip visa, right, for business. And I fly to England in the fall of 2011. And this is, like Borat's trip. And not in the sense that I greeted everyone, but damn, for me to get into the industry, I had no background at all. So that you understand, people who get into the industry here either studied in film school or went to some sort of universities, and I had zero. I drew pots in my free time in the 112th microdistrict where the guys were like doing pull-ups and the horizontal bars. Well, I was like, they're trying to do something, and I just had this water idea. Like, I thought that I'm going to come and they're going to find out like that I'm a fake, that is like I can't do it.
As if you're an imposter.
Yeah. It's why I arrive. I sit down next to Felix. And I say, Felix, hi, where are you from? He says, I'm from Spain, but I lived in New Zealand for 10 years. I worked on Lord of the Rings on the first, second parts, and this is back when I was still a really young guy. I type in Felix Balbas, I think that's what his last name is, and he has this huge resume there. There's this site, IMDb, where you can look up everything.
IMDb is like a global Kinepolis.
Yeah, so now I am there too. But then, when I look at this and his work there, Lord of the Rings Part 1, I think, damn, I am sitting next to Felix here. Can you imagine the inspiration that I had in that moment? And then I start working with them. And I had two competitors in this company, if I'm being honest. It's a German, a Japanese, and I'm a Tajik. We were a trio because the Japanese worked like crazy, and the Germans too. And I'm just like, damn, should I fall behind them? And we just sat there. There was also such a thing, like if you sit in the office for a long time, you can take a taxi home. And this was great for me. Just like we just sat until midnight or 1 a.m. and then we just still went home. And there was also a free dinner for us. And I'd sure got into a paradise, But the most important thing is that I finally got to a place where I saw people who do what I want to do. We draw, we work in 3D, and they were 3D artists. One was a 3D artist, the other was a composer who mixes everything, on his computer. And so there we were, the three of us, and we were I thought that we worked really well. And then at the end, they give us a trip to the Thames, right on the speedboat. If you haven't tried it, but not in the winter. You ride on this speedboat from La Mancha, along the Thames, from the wheel to the gates of the reservoir. So there are these huge gates there, and it's cool. It's really, really cool. So that is, we worked really well. We did a lot, and we eventually made this project, and there was this advertising campaign from Sky. We had to draw this huge background, and there was this huge semi-cylindrical panorama in each piece, and the camera turned like this. They did the foreground, they threw some snowflakes in there, and then I did the background. It was unrealistically difficult, but damn, I could do it. And in the end, I saw nothing. If you would ask me then, oh, you were in London, what did you see? I'd say nothing. I saw the bridge, which was below me, I also saw this Thai cafe. I just worked at endlessly because I knew that this was my chance. This is my chance, really.
You said that in the Western countries, it is difficult to receive some honest critique from your colleagues.
Definitely. I'm not sure, have you maybe heard of this concept called peaches and coconuts? Like peaches and coconuts, really.
Hard on the outside and soft on the inside, soft on the outside and hard on the inside.
Yeah, so you see there are some stereotypes, like Germans or Slavs or like Eastern Europeans, that is, you know what I mean? Austrians, Swiss, they're coconuts. First of all, they're gloomy on the outside, right?
Yeah.
You might think, whoa, and so on. But as soon as you get to know them, you finish the day together. Well, not me, but you specifically, you can drink with them. For example, but here's the opposite. For example, Americans, Australians, British, they're all soft on the outside. That is, you can have a very sincere conversation and communicate with them.
But at some point, they get very private.
Yeah, at some point they say, I'm going home. We're like, we'll go to your place. And he says, no, we'll see each other tomorrow. Something like that. But how does this help with work? For example, if you were working with coconuts, it's better to give them direct feedback right away. Well, for example, I was in Poland, right? In Polish Kaiser coconuts, they're ruthless. A guy there, I was at CD Projekt Red, these are the guys that do The Witcher, and there was this famous story when the art director stands over the artist and says, oh, you really made shit. And the guy says, yeah, I know. And they don't get offended at all.
What
they just
else can you say?
But
what can you expect?
But if you were to do this to an American or English-speaking community, the director would have been like, wow, yeah, it looks promising. Yeah, this is it is promising, and then they give you some feedback. and they tell you like how it should be done, and wrap it up again like with some good feedback. So just look. There was no such thing as right or wrong. Like, these are just different people. Remember, we talked about how it depends on people, right? Not on the nation, like, not on where you were born. It just depends on the many factors, on the personal ones. For example, like...
How do you know for sure? I mean, I'm not judging any of the approaches. It's like a standalone human language. You need to master it.
I'm Tajik. We're stuck in between, right? In fact, like, Central Asians have like this one thing. We can adapt to both sides. So that's why it was actually really easy for me. So plus I lived both there and there, and I roughly understand the range of skills and feedback and relationships and professional qualities.
Help me to get this straight. Imagine that we're presenting something in an English-speaking environment. Let's call it like that. We're presenting something to Americans or English people. And if someone comes and says, it's promising, at this point, does it mean that I suck?
It doesn't. No, you should pay attention to what they say. What they say next.
Promising, and then...
So what goes next is the critique. He says, guys, look, the exposition, the framing is wrong, the light can be improved, and so on. Like, you're overreacting a bit. Your interviews are too long. No one will watch it for 3 hours, and so on, you know?
So I should realize that all of this sucks, like total garbage, right?
Yeah.
And then
he will tell you, but it's promising. Like, again, promising, right? Like, with a little bit of work, just like a little bit more, and then so on. But if you know yourself, right? You have a lot of experience communicating with the Russian-speaking community. They tell you right to your face, this is crap. The interviews are too long, and so on.
Man, I mean, you gotta master it. I'm trying to imagine this, like, if I were you, it's very difficult.
This other layer too, right? These are the artists. We're not just a separate nation, but like a caste, because there is also the psychological aspect
You
here.
artists are introverts.
Yeah, like some artists don't accept criticism at all. It is like they're either too protective, they protect their, like, you know, you ask them, like, why did you do this? He said, well, I liked it. Very abstract formulations, you know, therefore, as an art director, you learn to decipher these puzzles. Like, how to explain to a person that this is not my personal request at all, like to make the grass red, but the director wants it, right? But the director wants it because this is on another planet. And when you explain this like in a motivated way, then it works out.
I mean, in this case, I imagine myself not the manager who berates, but rather the guy who welcomes criticism. And the closer it is to me, the better it would be for me, the executor. Do you have an opinion what works better, peach or coconut approach?
Both approaches are good in their own way. For me, it doesn't matter who I work with, right? What their background is. If he likes to work this way, then I will adjust. Really. Because my position as a leader, right? Say as an art director is the final product. How to make it great. So that the other half involved in the process is also inspired by the process itself. So, for example, if you spoon feed a guy from Kiev, right, and start pushing him, he's going to be like, this is bullshit. Tell it to me straight, right? And if you immediately tell an Englishman, right, we had one artist, he constantly commented on everything. He was from this post-Soviet space, and he just came up to foreigners, like in English, right, and said, move this to the right or to the left. And the English can't say anything at all. And he leaves, and they say later, damn, that was strange. Why is he giving us feedback? And so on. That was wrong, you know?
What was the first Hollywood movie you worked on?
Just luck. The company MPC has two branches, right, so to speak. Well, not branches, but there was MCVC advertising, where I ended up there was MPC film.
One branch produces advertising, another works on the film.
It's one company, but they have different profiles. I ended up, but they have this common hub there. So when you rent it, they give you this password and you can log in, and then there you can see everything that they're doing in MPC film in there, and that's where I first got acquainted with dailies, which is when they upload their work. And I'm watching it. What was the movie? Like, we were watching Prometheus then. I was like, oh my God, Prometheus. I'm going to tell everyone what's in Prometheus right now. Of course, I didn't know the script, but like I saw how it was. There was a spaceship called Magellan before, right? Not Prometheus. And there, once this daily comes in, like Magellan shot 31 is landing, and I'm watching all of this. So everything I dreamed of with planes and like all of this stuff, like all in one place. And I'm not working there, and I'm not angry, but I'm looking at this, like, how do I say like that? You can also see, like, who works in the office, who, like, while I was browsing, and immediately I spotted some post-Soviet people, because they're like, surnames, and there is one person, Andre, in his last name. I wrote to him, Andrei, hello, my name is Jama. I'm from Tajikistan, and I would love to chat with you. And Andrei thankfully responded, and we went out to a park, like Soho Square, which was nearby. We sat down, and as it usually turns out, like you get a sandwich, a hamburger, sit on the bench, and you talk. And he asks me, did you come from the States? And I say, no, I came from Tajikistan. And maybe it was different in Andrei's world, but it seemed to me that he asked me 3 times, did they invite you to come straight from Tajikistan? And I said, yes. He said, whoa, that's never happened in our company before. Well, and that's it, basically. And then what happened? I went back home, right? They realized that they liked working with me, and we started freelancing. That is, they sent me some briefs. I did them from Tajikistan. But there was a problem with the electricity again. We had already moved from the unofficial suburbs to a more or less normal micro-district, the 91st one, where at least there was hot water. But there was no constant electricity. So that you understand, we have hydroelectric power in Tajikistan. That is, in winter, the water level in the reservoir drops because the glaciers don't melt, and then planes power outages begin. Just imagine, sitting there, so who will we turn off today? This one. And then you imagine you're working, and suddenly, bang, the lights goes out. Well, you saved your files, you didn't lose them, right? But they write to me from MPC. Jama, hello, will you send your work in progress? I said, you guys, I'm terribly sorry. I don't have electricity at home. And they're naive, they're English, and they say, go to another neighbor's house or a friend's. And I said, it doesn't matter. And I say, you guys, really, there's no electricity in the whole district. And it was just, imagine when you're out in this atmosphere, right? Here in England, in 12 years, my light has flickered once. Just like that, blink, blink, and that's it. And it said there was a constant power outage. We still have this problem in Tajikistan, so I don't know how it is now. I haven't lived there for 12 years, but this was a pain. And at the end, I worked with them for a certain time, and they said, just looked at me and they said, look, that's not right. We invite you to come. Then I got a visas and left with the family. And then I was in my first marriage, me, my son, and my ex-wife. And then we moved to England. And I worked for another year at MPC advertising. But since then I was so that you understand, I always worked in the art department. That is I only did art. Yes, I can do 3D. Yes, I can do some primitive animations, but I develop visuals, And we had related projects with MPC Film, and a couple of times they invited me onto a project. My first movie, I think, was Percy Jackson. I don't remember the ending there. One of them, Percy Jackson's and X-Men. The first time I realized that I got into a movie is when I sit on the dailies. On that side is a Hollywood director, and the light goes out, and he talks to us.
You mean video chat, right?
Yes. And we were creating Sentinels. Those were huge robots. We made them. It was my first job, really, in 2012. I don't know. Earlier, I used to joke about Michael Bay, a Michael Bay movie. We all know what they're about, epic music and so on. But I changed my mind. When I worked at ILM, I no longer went to museums because I had seen everything. At ILM, I stayed for lunch. But I had such a hobby there, watching the dailies. What are your dailies? You can go to a production hub and watch how they make the shots.
Dailies mean daily reports.
Yes. So every day, every artist publishes what they worked on that day. For example, an artist made a waterfall. They publish their work in progress. And at first, it's something super simple, right? Or take a modeler. At first, they show 3 or 4 cubes. Then it all turns into something. And they progressively add more. In many shots, there's a blue screen on the shots. That is, the studio gives them some shots, or rather sequences, where everything is shot live, but the background is blue. And to the artists, it's very interesting how they do all of this. But I saw this live action by Michael Bay, and just so you know, I take my hat off to him. Really, I won't ever say again, because rather, I'm never going to say again, but I'm not going to pronounce his name with such
What
a saying.
Exactly did you see there?
Bear with me. So this was the 5th Transformers movie. This was in the shot, a shot from the helicopter. That is, they fly with the camera on a helicopter, and there was this road there, and on the road, either Jeeps or Hummers are driving on it. I don't remember, some armored vehicles. And in the end, how it happens in the movie, a transformer comes out from under the ground, and all these machines fly apart. I would have thought that this was all digital, this was all pure CGI.
The CGI.
Everything that was in the shot. And the only thing missing was the dinosaur. So that is, the machines were flying apart. The Transformers, yeah. They pulled them with the cables and they flew apart, and there are these sparks flying right under the helicopter. It was really cool. So he is this master at this. So
I have a silly question. Are they still using helicopters and not drones to film?
Well, maybe, but maybe that it was, I'll correct myself. There was a helicopter in the shot. So you understand, the helicopter flew into the frame, and I don't know what it was shot from, maybe from a drone, but the helicopter flew into the camera, and these machines flew apart, and it was really cool. Plus, there's the signature, like what are they called? Whether they're explosions, usually there are sparks. I also made a lot of explosions in my professional. Usually an explosion is an explosion, right? But with Michael Bay, there's always a lot of sparks flying out.
Meaning the explosion is real.
No, it just means that he has his own view on how an explosion should look from an artistic standpoint.
So he's putting more effort.
He's making his explosions more expressive.
So when you're working on big Hollywood movies, how often do you communicate to directors?
Well, it depends on the project. So look, the second person after the director in my pipeline is the production designer. That is the set designer. The one who is responsible for the construction of the architecture, right? Not the architecture, but like the sets and so on. So you usually have more contact with him because the director works with him, and the production designer hires a team that works with the visuals,
Whom did you meet? I mean, as far as I know, the majority of your workflows are under NDAs. I don't want to compromise you, but can you name any big names that you've worked with? For example, Guy Ritchie. Tell me about it.
Well, Guy Ritchie,
really curious.
He's tough. There are stories about him. He also practices some kind of Eastern martial arts, right? And there's a story that he broke someone's arm, but not like he took someone in a hold. It just happened accidentally. But he's really quite tough. Like he doesn't like sketches. He doesn't understand them. That is, if you draw a sketch for him in an old school way with the lines, there's an expression like freak out, right? So he can just turn the table over and so on.
Right in front of you?
Yes. He likes, but that's why if you noticed, in Aladdin is more realistic. That is like, you can't just draw a blue Will Smith and it will work out. I'm talking about vector graphics, right? That's how he is. But my first encounter with a celebrity was precisely during the time when I had just moved from Tajikistan. I went to the bathroom at NBC, and there's like usually some kind of like a fork, right? Like the bathroom, the door opens, and out comes Danny Boyle. This is the one who like
trains by.
Yes, Slumdog Millionaire in Sunshine. And he's like, oh, sorry. And he walks past, and I'm like, damn, that was Danny Boyle. Oh, my God. That was Danny Boyle. And then Ridley Scott came when they were doing Prometheus. And you should understand. So here's the thing. You really want to get an autograph, right? Or take a picture. But the thing is that when you're already in this work process, somehow, like, for example, when Will Smith comes to the set, right? Your jaw drops to the floor, but you try to keep your back straight so that, like, well, to remain professional. We had really close contact with Adam Stockhausen. He's Steven Spielberg's main production designer, and he works with him constantly. Do you remember he won an Oscar for the Grand Budapest Hotel?
As a production designer.
So this movie is all about the visuals.
Yeah, it's well deserved.
So yeah, and I don't know, like, they somehow got along with Steven Spielberg in almost all of the films that he's like such a modest man, like really, he's just competent. Not to say that he went with us to eat kebabs at a kebab shop, but he's like really humble. He came to us, asked some questions and so on. We only saw Steven Spielberg via video chat. It was funny. Like once he gave us like a feedback call from somewhere in Italy on this, what's it called?
On a beach.
No, worse. What's it called? Not a boat, but
yacht.
Yacht, yes. But there was one really funny story. Jurassic World is Steven Spielberg's franchise, right? And despite the fact that there are different directors, he alone approves all of the dinosaurs. That is like he says, okay, we're not okay there, and so on. And you can find pictures on my page when there's like an approved stamp in the corner. There's a stamp there. There's a stamp there, right? Like he puts a stamp on the ones that he's approved. And once we even got a letter from him. We sent a design. He said, "Looking awesome. Thank you." And there was a Steven Spielberg, Amblin Entertainment.
Your dad has printed it and is showing this letter to everyone back home in Dushanbe, even to electricians.
Yeah, whether a person understands it or not, he just shows it to all of them. And now he's like telling everyone. You see, it's hard to explain to a person when they're already at a certain age, Like, it's quite abstract.
How old is your dad?
He's 84. But this time, the last time that he came, Ahsoka was just coming out, right? And of course, I showed him at home, Dad, just look, I did this. I have a lot of work for this movie. And he comes to me one time, I saw her on the bus. The fact that I told him about it didn't make any impression on him at all. But you know, like there's the double-decker driving around, and there was this huge Asaki image on it with her long hair. And he's like, damn, this really must be cool.
You've been living in Tajikistan during the Civil War. What was it like?
It was messed up. I mean, just look.
Let's give an overview, okay? The war happened in early 90s.
It was the 90s, yeah.
One side was supporting the government, and the other was protesting, and they clashed bearing arms.
Yeah, but it was a bit more complicated there. Again, like you see, like history is this thing. Like there was no YouTube back then, and someone, from what I then later realized, it became interesting to me because like when you're inside of it, it's not clear. It's clear what the result is, right? That some lost to others, and as far as I understand, I may be wrong because I didn't delve into it too much, but this is the most pleasant stage of my life. But after the collapse of the Soviet Union, we were right under Afghanistan, right? So there was this movement, and there was no Taliban yet. There was a Wahhabi movement. I think that was also kind of a separate thing. But in short, they wanted to capture Tajikistan. That is, they had some kind of their own plans, Sharia, and so on. And they captured several cities, and it all started with huge rallies on the squares, right? Like I was 11 or 12 years old, and it was really scary when like these crowds of people gather on the streets. And at the same time, I was into photography, and I carried these glass pieces in a suitcase, or rather in a bag, which then I pressed into photo paper when you put it under like a developer, right? And I remember once I opened up in my bag, and they say, "What's all of this glass?" And I was a little boy, you know, I was just like crap to myself when it happened. And in the end, I was fine, but plus they also started shooting outside. That was sort of thing like that. My dad, for example, then they made like what are they called?
Barricades.
They made these barricades, and my dad was not in territorial defense, but like in
the checkpoints.
Yeah, in short, they were outside. He had this funny weapon, actually. My brother did fencing, and then we were all into various like kung fu in our youth and like that, you know what I mean? And he made this samurai sword from my brother's rapier, right? It was really cool. Like we later wrapped it wrapped it up like it was really cool. But like my dad still has it, I think. I don't know to this day. But I don't know how to understand like how he would have defended himself with it at all.
Against a firearm.
Against a firearm, yeah. Imagine you're living in this mess, right? It really affects your psyche. Like you don't feel it, but it stays with you.
Were there any confrontations in Dushanbe?
Of course. Well, damn, like we found a corpse at some point there. Like they threw it into the garbage. It was scary, like really scary. I remember like we were standing outside, right? 2 planes were flying by. You just hear the rumble, and it's really scary. I just can't imagine what people are going through right now in Ukraine because it's just scary. It's terrible. There's nothing good about it. So in the end, Russia supported on the one side. Someone got hit on the head, but it's still going on. It's been going on for several years, and it came out of Dushanbe, but still, the confrontation, I think it officially ended in 1997, but at that time, I studied at the Lyceum from 1993 to 1997. That's it. Everything was bad. There was not enough food. It was like a prison, really. And in our family, like everything was bad too because my parents are artists. And who needs artists when your country is on fire, right? I remember my mom brought me to the. Here's what she did. Like she grated carrots on a grater and sprinkled them with sugar. And I loved this dish for some reason. But ideally, you should add apples to it, right? But I think that we didn't have enough money for apples back then, and she just brought it to the school. Every time she told me this, like tears like welled up in her eyes. I forgot about this, but like apparently for her, it was like more memorable than for me because like why it's so hard for parents. Just imagine you're growing up and you realize that you can't do anything. She at least I think realized that I was in the Lyceum and I was busy there, and in any case, it's quite difficult, right? And the thing about the Lyceum, it's a prison. It's a mini prison. That it's like there are their own laws, and you have to share everything with everyone. And plus, there was no heating there, so we had this big problem with electricity. And after the collapse of the Soviet Union, I don't remember what year, there was no heating at all. Imagine this winter, and our winters are very cold. Like I mean, we have like a continental climate, a hot summer and a very cold winter. And she says, "You came. I'm sure of this. Like with your hands in chilblains. Do you know, like, what that chilblains are? It's like when your hands crack. Well, due to a lack of vitamins, like, but you wash your hands and there are no towels and everything just starts to crack up to the blood, And she says, you ate 2 spoons, and you said to me, Mom, the guys are looking, I can't finish this. I have to share with them. In short. And in the end, you just go, and they, like, surround you like piranhas after you bring it in, like, you know, and so, like, you have a little piece of pancake bread, like, but we became friends with all of these guys, and there were also these bunk beds there. That is, like, you also have, like, a bedmate there, right? And I always slept on top. Because I loved jumping up there. And so, oh my God, how many times I fell down. You know, just like a bunk bed. Like, well, these are like old like dorm stories. But again, we had a computer. We had an awesome education. We studied English, Turkish, very productive. And we all just became friends. That is, whoever came to the Lyceum, that's like when you talk about the Sultan, like I have some kind of distant, warm feelings for him, I guess. Because I understand that he is from our castle in general.
Hold on. In your lycée, there was no electricity or heating, but the computers were
no, there were problems with the light.
Oh.
So that is like, it was constantly, you see it's like the same everywhere. There was there was light, like only for those who need it, right? That is, for those who have power. But in general, they allocated light to the institutions too. But there was this one thing. If there was no light in the Lyceum, everyone was at home. Because you can't wash, you can't take a shower, and so on. And once, like, so you understand why I say prison. Like we just got up at 5 a.m. At 5 a.m. Our first lesson was from 6 to 7. It was a Turkish system. You know, like how they do it there. It wasn't even a lesson, but we did our homework. It was called etude, but it was probably a French word that migrated, into Turkish. Whatever. There was this first etude from 6 to 7. Then breakfast, and the first lesson started at 8. And then there were these 8 lessons, and then 3 more etudes in the evening. So we just studied endlessly. So imagine how hard it was to get up in the morning, especially in the winter when it's cold. You sleep like a mummy, only your head is sticking out. And at 5 a.m, just someone comes in and turns on the light, right? We all overslept all the time, right? Someone pretended that the light was turned on, and pulling the switch. Damn, we were just such reckless kids. Somehow we made it into adulthood. Suppose I was given a brief that says, we want a planet completely covered in sand, right? And they always, again, they say, they give you some sort of like, especially in Star Wars, there was such an unspoken rule, right? 80% of the real world and 20% is made up. That's why I think like Star Wars resonates so much, because you see it right away. For example, the Empire is a reference to Nazism, their uniform, etc., everything. The rebels are, of course, the resistance, and there are many references to the real world. I think that's why people are so impressed by this saga here.
You drew this in Photoshop.
Yeah, I did, but like this is VR plus 3D plus Photoshop. It's a mix of tools.
Right. How does it look like in the movie?
Like this. Whoa. So just look, they made more space here. Like, if you look at the structure very closely, you'll see it, right?
Yeah, but your building looked more modern, more metal-ish, if you will, and they made it a little bit rusty. It looks like a bit ruined.
Well, so they added an enclosure here. But if you squint, look, like, that's what we talked a lot about Impressionism, remember? My task is to make it so that, like, if you inspire people, so to speak, of course, at the next stages, every artist wants to make their own contribution, and that's really cool, but everything starts with the simplest things. For example, I often make such a black and white sketch. It can take like 2 to 3 hours, it depends. And so here was the brief, like make one where the guys are running, right? They were supposed to move across the plane and through the dunes. And there. So I do this, and the director says, super, I like it, can you add a little bit of detail? And so I do this detail. I really often realize that I pull out a lot of references from Tajikistan. But again, like here, you use the same formula. 80% is from the real world, that is, like you take some mountains, but you give them the shape that does not exist, or maybe is like slightly distorted. Like here, for
this
example.
one, yeah. But you didn't create these animals, did you?
These animals were already created.
They were. So when cropping, you already knew how these saddle beasts would look like.
And so here's how it looked in the movie. Well, roughly, you see it like resembles a silhouette.
Wow, man, this is quite unusual. So you did this, and the director asked you to crop the image?
Yeah.
No, hold on. You kind of played director's role, too. You came up with the shot, you visualized it, and the director copied it, basically.
Again, look, this is a collaborative work. We are working together as a team. They are introducing ideas that I'm drawing and then sending back to them, but then they come back with feedback and so on. So I always try
to as it is.
So I always try to avoid things like I did everything myself.
Sure.
It would be too forced. And it was this picture that I drew here, right? I still remember how I drew this lens flare. right here. So you just draw it manually. And then I get paid for this, by the way.
You said that in terms of drawing post-apocalyptic images, be that landscapes or characters, or apocalyptic worlds in general, people who lived in the Soviet Union are exceptionally good at it.
Yeah, we grew up there. And so if you tell an Englishman how we used to throw bricks at each other in a pit, it was like our game. Like, what was it called? Like we hit each other, right? They think, what the hell? But we really did it. We had the pit nearby. We threw bricks at each other, and I have a scar somewhere here.
What was the goal of the game?
Well, you had to hit somebody with a brick.
Oh, not dodging.
Yes. Well, I don't know what was I thinking back then, man. A guy throws this stone at me, and I thought it was a sponge. Well, it just looked so porous.
Yeah.
In short, I wanted to hit it with my head. It was a brick, and it just hit me right here. So you see, we had a complete setting. You go outside, and there's dirt, there's mud. So when they tell me about the Soviet Union and how great it was, I say stop. Look, I'm happy with my childhood. No complaints to my parents or anything, really. But when they start romanticizing all of this, but the visual series, yeah, it's cool. If you work with guys from Ukraine or Russia, like, you don't need to clarify. You need to make a dirty entrance, right? But we all know what that looks like. You know, like when you come up to it, and there's like this huge piece of plaster like falling right in front of you. But this too, like you see, like, can it be used in a positive way? I use it for artistic techniques. Sure, because in any case, if you were told to draw New York in the 1930s, right? And I don't know what it looks like. You may have seen it somewhere in the movies, but therefore, in addition to skills and the ability to come up with something, it is very important for an artist to have what is called a vision library. There is such a term, right? Like, an artist is like a sponge. So that's why I love to travel so much. And unfortunately, the concept of our traditions, it's cool. I respect my traditions. I respect my past. But we, as people, can learn so much from each other. And instead of closing ourselves off, saying, like, my language is the most beautiful, my food is the tastiest. I'm crazy about Tajik food, but every time I come to Moscow, I go to Eastern Food Cafe, right? And even if it's somewhere similar to genuine food, but at the same time, saying that this is the tastiest food is complete nonsense, because there are so many interesting things out there. And every time you communicate with someone, you get so many interesting visual tastes and all of these other experiences. It often happens, well, not often, like, we normally don't know the script. That is, they send us separate scenes, but they also give us the script. And so this is what I don't like the most, because, for example, for Ready Player One, they sent me the script of the movie that Steven Spielberg was making. And you were given, like, with a book with your name on it, Jama Jurabaev, right? Written diagonally on every page.
I get it. So that if it leaks, everyone would find out who leaked it.
Can you imagine? Like, it's not that I'm forgetful. I can get distracted somewhere, and I look around, and I'm, like, walking home nervously thinking, like, why the hell did they give this?
Yeah, I bet you were scared of leaving it somewhere.
Well, yeah, imagine, like, if you just forget it somewhere, like, you're distracted, and that's it. That's the last day of your career, but in the end, it didn't happen. So next.
Did you burn the screenplay after that?
No, you just give it back. That's it.
Okay.
Well, they give you the script to read so that you understand the overall picture and so on. But on The Mandalorian, right, they even asked me, like, tell us. Like, but I said, like, even if I knew, I couldn't, because I didn't see the whole puzzle. You see, in general, we, like, the whole team, were told that we would have a little Yoda, right? But they didn't tell us how old. Little also varies, that is, right? He could be 10 to 15, you know what I mean?
And you thought it would be around 5 or 6 years old?
5 or 6, yeah. Like, you guessed it right. I thought that he would be more conscious. So I made this first episode, right? So here you see he's being told, like, no, and he's reaching for a gun. Or, I'm sorry, like, I call this picture Baby Yoda when he found out how much tax he would have to pay in England. So here he is with the Mandalorian, sleeping on his chest and so on. In the end, they didn't choose my work, and I think that they chose way better. Christian Alsman, my colleague, he's just awesome. He's the one that made Baby Yoda. But in his version, he was just a baby, you know? Like, he didn't talk and so on. He came up with it really super easily. But at the same time, you see, it doesn't mean that you can't contribute, that is, like, you'd be involved. For example, like, I made this picture where there was no design yet. So you think, like, what angle to choose so that...
to present the character, but still...
Yeah. Your demonstration, his flying egg from the inside, right? Like, I thought maybe they set up a camera, and here's this composition. So when I got a job at ILM, they ask you a question at the interview. It's a classic, like, are you a fan of Star Wars? I watched Star Wars sitting on my friend's shoulders in the October movie theater in the 82nd micro district in Dushanbe.
In Dushanbe.
Yes, because we didn't have any money. And you just have to watch it just like this. You watch for 5 minutes and then you just switch places,
You were
right?
watching the movie from outside the theater?
No,
I mean, how could you see the screen?
Well, we had no money. So it was
air.
this open-air movie theater. So, yeah, and you see like a...
So you are a fan.
Well, I said that I'm not a fan. Because then we had this Civil War, right? What's Star Wars? We had our own wars. I'm not that big of a fan, I guess. I always liked this universe, but I'm not that knowledgeable because people really know it. They know every character. But of course, when you start working on a project, just like I did with dinosaurs, you do your research. You go back, you start immersing yourself because you can't do something. But if you want to do something convincing, you have to understand what you're doing.
You had to be in the context.
Yeah.
This rule always works.
Plus, sometimes another question, or rather a counter-argument, they ask, but if everything already exists, you can't come up with anything new.
Yeah,
so, yes,
like
which
a
is also
fresh look.
incorrect because the universe is expanding, right? They can take the Mandalorian planet where it was mentioned, but then you enrich it. You show some episodes. I played an ace card there, so I didn't miss it. I said, it's precisely because I'm not a fan that you should hire me because I can bring something new to the Star Wars universe, to the Star Wars universe. But they hired me at ILM first. That was a long time ago. And then we worked on Rogue One together, the 8th part, and then on The Mandalorian, and I already understood everything more or less. Yeah, really.
When was the first time you visited Russia?
Oh, look, my mom is Russian. She's from Siberia, so we went to visit relatives in Siberia a lot. We even lived in Siberia.
Is your mom Tatar?
Well, she is half Russian, half Tatar.
Oh, okay.
So her father is Russian, her grandfather's name is Matvey, and her mother was a Tatar. Yes, and we often went to the village. The village was called Rainbow Village.
What region was that?
Novosibirsk region.
Have you faced any special treatment? I mean, have you faced xenophobia as a Tajik?
That's a sensitive topic. Just look, there's a belief, right, that there was no xenophobia in the Soviet Union, which I completely disagree with. My question is, where did it come from and why did it appear in 1991? It was there. The Soviet Union just suppressed us, right? So I think, damn, it was all there, and so on. But I was little and didn't feel it. But that is, I lived in Siberia. But you should understand, even by skin color, it was a little bit different, right? Just imagine, it was the backwoods. My brother was lighter skinned, but the sun hit me, and I immediately became tanned. It was really tan. But damn, even later, when I returned to Russia, it was the first time we went with my brother's agency. We came to Russia with the agency. We also decided, we need to get into the market somehow, yeah?
Russian market.
Yeah, and so, we had already worked together. We worked with Beeline, cell phone, network provider, and so on. But we went there to gain experience. For example, the guys from BBDO held workshops there.
You were around 25, 27 years old.
I was already 27 or 28, and we'd been there twice. So we participated in BBDO workshops there. It was really It was really cool. But just look, to understand what xenophobia is, you just need to take the Dushanbe-Moscow flight once. You see, the people who fly there, of course, these people are workers, and maybe they may not know the language. And there's nothing wrong with not knowing Russian, or if you speak it poorly, but they arrive in a country where they are immediately, you just have to see with your own eyes, really, how they are treated. It's at least not nice, yes, people complain about customs all over the world, but there is no such experience that you get, flying this flight anywhere in the post-Soviet country.
What do you mean? Customs officers looking down on you?
Yeah, they do. In general, the person who sits in this booth has certain power over you because they can refuse you, deport you, right? And in this MIDI format, you see a demo version of authoritarianism. There was a mega combo flight, It's almost like in the movies. Uzbekistan and Tajikistan flights land in Vnukovo Airport. It is just a mess. And I once flew through Vnukovo Airport because I had a connection flight, and I was flying to England. Just like the flight lands. The guys disembark. Naturally, the Uzbeks don't know Russian. We don't know Russian. We go, and there, it's just like, do you remember in the Soviet adaptation of The Jungle Book, when Baloo separates the red dogs to one side and the black dogs to the other side? And there was standing a Russian man right there, right? And, well, this is metaphorical, so you should understand. I'm an artist, and I exaggerate everything, embellish everything, and he's standing there, and he sorts them. He watches over there, because, and there's written in there, like, for Russian, like, transit and baggage. I saw it from afar, and began to rearrange for transit, because I have a transit flight to London. But he keeps checks, because apparently there were cases when people just walked over that way instead of Moscow, and then they ended up in London, whatever. Well, just bypassed or something. And I approached him, and he's like, stop. Well, I see where he's going, right? But he still stopped me, and he says, let me see your ticket. And he looks at it. Oh, London? Yeah. And why are you going there? I say, I work there. He's like, respect, man. And lets me pass. But I'm still offended for my compatriots, right? You just know that such a strange attitude towards them for no reason. It's clear that they misunderstand some things, and perhaps, like, it was still... It seems to me our biggest problem in the post-Soviet space is that we don't try to solve the problem. We try to eliminate the symptoms of this problem. There is a problem. Tajiks do not understand where to go, right? Let's put a guy who will hit them on the head so that they go correctly. No, just change your infographics, make it in Tajik, right? You need to deal with the root of the problem, not with some superficial symptoms. That's my opinion.
So, Jama, what happens here?
Just look, that workstation over there is digital, right? So, where I sit at the computer, turn on the music. So, this is my traditional, how to say, in general, the station where I don't do digital work. So, you see I have model airplanes here, although I haven't finished any of them yet. But here I sit, I don't have a computer, which is great for relaxing me. But in a professional sense, it's also one of the stages when I make things manually with my hands. Because sometimes it's faster, sometimes it's more like...
Faster than drawing.
Yeah. Well, drawing, not really, because you're like making a 3D model. Look, just remember what we talked about, right? About the bones. I misnamed them a little bit. You make the frame in the beginning, right? For example, if you're making a robot for Star Wars, in the beginning you make the legs. Let's say I wanted the legs to be of this size, right? So here maybe I'll have the head, right? So why is it cool when you do it by hand? Because you immediately feel the volume in scale. So here, the way I was sitting the other day, and I made a sculpture, and with it, I started right here. That is, I wanted to try, like, it's head fell off. In fact, well, here, look, he should have a head, and here he is as if he's fighting with somebody, conditionally. Naturally, the head should be bigger, but this is all cool. But there is a problem with this. Firstly, not everything gets immediately digitized. But what's awesome about this, right? I mean, it's a bit damaged, but in principle, if you balance this correctly, it should stand. It is... If you stick it in there, right, you see it stands. You feel the weight of the character, something you don't really feel on the computer.
Okay.
Because using a computer, like, it stands right away, because there's no gravity, etc. And so this is really cool. But the next step, if you want to make, like, for example, you want to change his skin, or make some tattoos, or make, like, if he's a warrior, like some sort of markings, or etc. You know what I mean? But you can, in fact, scan it, right? Yeah. But it's still, so to speak, like one gap in between. So that's exactly why I use this similar approach, but in VR. So when you do the same thing, but you don't get your hands dirty, and you have more opportunities to make faster changes. So, you know what I mean? For example, let's look. We're sculpting a head, and I attach the head, and you say, well, damn, that's kind of small. I agree, but to make a new head, you just have to... Well, imagine I've already made a detailed head, right? You can't just pick it up and enlarge it like that, but in VR you can.
So what are we doing now?
Just look. So we are building some kind of a basis here. So, and as we found out that that's pretty cool, there's tactility in it in necessary proportions, you can touch it basically, but there is one downside. You can't quickly transfer it to the computer afterwards. So besides that, I mean, you can transfer it manually, but you can't quickly add details or change proportions. So, for example, like if I want to quickly enlarge it, I'll have to like tear it off and then just reattach it. So, you can't just quickly enlarge it in something, so therefore VR, like you can be done digitally. But the problem is that when you're working with a mouse, you have only one plane in which you can move the objects. But with VR, you can actually have 6 axes along which you can do like, you know what I mean?
You can look at your model from different angles.
Yeah, so just look. There's actually a practical application here. So here, for example, is an illustration I made. See? If you look at this guy here, he's actually what we started off with.
The one with the mace.
Yes, the one that was sculpted. So obviously I changed the head design and so on, but an intermediate stage was this VR sculpture right here. So in here, basically just look, in terms of feelings, you know what, except for the fact that I have a bucket on my head, it's all the same. So that is, just look, I have this same brown platform, there's a character that I can rotate, but now I can easily do things like this. For example, let's see, I can like pick it up and move it. And in VR, I wouldn't be able to. I mean, like with clay, because I wouldn't be able to do this, right? Since I don't have any supports, right? So I wouldn't have to theoretically build all of that. And so essentially you get new possibilities. And here, because you feel it, that's why it's very difficult to do this on the computer, because like, I mean, like you can do it and also sculpt on the computer without VR, but in VR, it adds more of these like gestural things, right? That is like these dynamic things that are better comprehended. And see, I can like rotate it with my model. See, I can do anything with it. And so here, I drew this with some, like a necklace with a skull, right? In addition to being able to move, like I can also be able to feel how, for example, this rope would tighten on him. So for example, I can do this, right? You see it? So everything that I told you about is your tool palette, you know? There's no such thing as this is the best moment. So there are artists who only like to sculpt, like Simon Lee. There are artists who only like to draw. I like everything equally, honestly. So just then look. So we talked about references and the number of monitors, right? So here, for example, I could pull out something and quickly put something, what are they called? References. Just to scatter them around like this, right? I have unlimited space and I can just hang one sculpture right here, one here. So just look, there's one catch, which I've already joked about, is this thing right here. It's too heavy, it's too cumbersome, etc.
Too tight, right?
Well, it's heavy, and just imagine, for 8 hours, you won't be able to sit like this. Like, so I was one of those who promoted all of this, and I'm still one of those who says, over time, this will be widely used, especially by professionals, just the technology needs to advance a little bit. For example, like what Apple is doing right now, it's crazy.
What are they making?
Well, just like with their new headset, they removed the controllers, right? That is, you'll do everything with your hands. You'll just take this model, and it's the same thing that I did with clay, only now it's all like, well, this is the future. And I even have a funny story. When I started doing VR experiments, I recorded videos on YouTube and on Facebook, and I talked about it. And I have friends who all work as concept artists. And one of them writes to me like, dude, yesterday we showed your work to Jim. So you just understand, Jim is James Cameron. And they showed him the videos on the studio. Yeah, like,
Jim, yeah.
Yeah, apparently they were working Avatar, and well, so he said that like on the next day, you know, they had VR stations installed for all the artists so that they could work with them. And I didn't really know what they were working at the time, but when I saw the movie, I understood why they did it, because just look, VR is actually like the place where you'd like, for example, in Avatar, right? There were a lot of handmade, like, remember there were those villages of the Na'vi people, and they were all woven. And suppose you can't tie a knot on a computer with one move, right? See, but here you can. And so just imagine if these were some chains, right? They're holding a guy back. You just can't quickly make this thing, right? And so then I clearly understood why they had them installed so quickly. For example, see, you can do like this.
Right, okay, it's tied, and then you save this project. So you basically tie this knot, and then you can efficiently transfer it to production.
Well, I mean, you see, like, it's very rough right now. Like, you can, for example, change the collar for him. Further, of course, someone will need to make a real chain out of this, but even now, like, I can do it, it'll just take a lot more time, right? But because you're doing this in 3D, just like I'm doing this, and I'm already getting in a chain bit by bit. So that is like what I did at the beginning. Let's rewind a couple of actions. It was a sketch. Then I can take this sketch and put it on another layer. So this is called a preliminary drawing. It's like a preliminary one, right? I can take it like this, throw it into this layer, and then give this layer a little bit of transparency, fix it so I can't move it, right? See? And so now I can create a new layer. For example, choose our favorite color here. Well, let's choose black. Right here, the palette has changed a little bit. And so now I can start making this chain. And so I already have a base, right? And so now I can do this, and I just need to make one, like a, what's it called? One chain length. One chain length, yeah. So then I can duplicate it, and now I'm duplicating it like this, you see? That is, it turns into a 3D brush for me. And that's it. You can do this, move it. and so on. So what's the trick here? You make it all as one. For example, imagine I'm going to draw one composition here, right? Roughly. Here, I drew it.
A bush.
A bush, yeah. Now I just take this bush and I can group it. Now it's a group for me. And just look, I can take this group. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Click, 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 click. And what is this? I mean, come on, see, this is awesome for kids because, in fact, you know who struggles with the most with this? Professional artists. Because for them it is new. We artists are conservatives, right? New gadgets are, it's just because I'm from Tajikistan, I don't really care. It turns out best for children because they don't have, we have this that is, we're used to it, right? But kids didn't just take this and they're natural. That is, they start doing all of this right away.
They really enjoy it.
Yeah. And here. So see, we were looking at it in this, so to speak, boring lighting. But then when you pull it out and add, for example, like glowing to the stores, which also affect the composition, into bit by bit, you may be working on here's another version that I made right here. Here they are together right here.
Nice.
And then start to refine it. Yeah, something like that. Then you make a zombie. My favorite thing. And in the end, you get something like this.
Are you a believer?
I'm spiritual. So look, remember I told you about those Turkish religious movements? So naturally, they carried religion with them. That is, as they preached it. And at that time, I was quite interested in religion.
Are they Shiites or Sunnis?
They're Sunnis. But look again, with all of these religious movements, each branch believes that they will now do everything right. And so I didn't really see anything bad from them. For me, it was a huge surprise, all of this cool stuff and so on, because they gave us knowledge, gave us good skills. Because believe me, we are huge assholes when it comes to high school, right? I don't know that I'm not an asshole now, but we did so much crap back then in that quote-unquote prison. And then all the guys who graduated actually became good people. That is, they represent some sort of noble institution at least. I didn't see anything bad in this particular movement, but my attitude towards religion cooled down a bit because I saw that religion can be used to manipulate people very easily and do not very nice things with it.
Did you see any examples of it?
There were many examples, even religion's attitude towards certain things, like towards homosexuality, for instance. For me, it's a painful topic because I came here, actually, I was intolerant and conservative, like, oh, what? I'm ashamed of those things now because how I used to tease, like, no tolerance, and so on. Then I came here.
Were you a homophobe when you came here?
And I grew up in a patriarchal society, yes. My dad told me stories about how I was the most unique. All women should just be at my feet and so on. And bit by bit, as you begin to understand all this, you realize, damn, this is just barbaric. And in religion, especially in Islam, with this, like, for example, my friends who will watch this interview will no longer invite me to, and we gather often. And these guys, very cool guys, of course, are still really religious. And every time the topic of transgender people and homosexuality comes up, they have these like cannibalistic comments like, we just need to gather them up and do something with all of them. And I say, you guys, I would rather live with transgender people and homosexuals than come and listen to this bullshit from you guys. So You were saying this in Dushanbe?
I was. Well, that's brave.
My post-Soviet past, the collapse of the Soviet Union, there was this patriarchal society, anti-Semitism, all these things are mixed into the general ideology, and you grow up, I think, and you don't even understand why, but you form some general,
It's in the air you breathe.
Yeah, and that's why I never judge anyone now. For example, I don't judge if I'm uncomfortable at something and I don't agree with it, but if a person grows up in this country, right, it's very difficult to break out of these boundaries, I think, because I myself understand even as an artist, it was hard for me to break the boundaries because no one around me was doing it. The same goes for my beliefs. If you live in Tajikistan, you can't wake up one day and say, damn, I understand everything. That is, it happens with experience. So when you live here, you communicate with these people, you understand that it's not even about sex somehow. For some reason, people think like, oh, that's why their main objection is the Pride Parade when they walk naked and so on. It's not even about sex, it's about love. For example, my favorite episode in The Last of Us is the third episode. Frank's love, I forget what the second one is called, but it can be called like
a homosexual couple.
Yeah, it's wonderful, and it's about love. And every time people, like, I also get angry when people talk about this who haven't even seen a single transgender person in their life. You know, they have like a picture from off of their TV screens or just like word of mouth. Well, you know yourself how it works now. Just look at what's happening in Russia right now. This topic is simply being spun to distract attention because it has always, since ancient times, been something that, like, you know, provokes emotions in people and so on. And they just throw you a bone. My dad came here and I was like, well, bud, what do you think? And he came the first time, you know, like walked around, dog blew me. And I say, don't be afraid if a transgender person won't bite you. And he didn't even cross paths with anyone. Once a 70-year-old man walked by in a skirt with purple hair, you know? And my dad said, who was that? And I said, well, I don't know.
Just a neighbor.
Yes, our neighbor. That is, you know, you just realize that it's complete nonsense. We should already just move on. We have huge problems in front of us. Climate problems. A million of other problems, AI, and people are still sitting and complaining about transgender people or homosexuals, you know? It's complete nonsense.
You either shouldn't or must not draw people if you're Muslim. You cannot draw a human image.
Yes. So if you've been to mosques in Istanbul or somewhere else, there are a lot of patterns, you know? I mean, you can create visual art. Well, not art, but you can create. But it shouldn't be human images. That's why there are no icons, anything else like that, as, for example, in the Orthodox Church or Catholics.
Is that a problem for you?
Do you know what category I fall into? I made sketches of a green man with big ears, you know? Who is he? A human-like or non-humanoid? Because of this, like, I distance myself from religion because there is no clear consensus here. There are some general formulations that everyone interprets for themselves. And the scariest thing is that depending on how this person interprets it, right, they can rephrase everything. You understand? Let them explain to me, like, why was I sinful when I drew Baby Yoda? You know, that's stupid. Maybe it can be formulated, right? You can't encroach on God's will. I'm not creating anything. I just have a fantasy. I come up with things. Just like, for example, stand-up comedians, right? They take real situations and just deliver them in a comical context, right? Or I'm a cartoonist, and they take a person and make a caricature of them, right? Or of you and Boris Johnson, right? Are they going to burn in hell because of this? That's complete nonsense. So I don't agree with that.
In 2019, on a podcast, you said you were apolitical. Is that correct?
Yeah.
You were never interested in politics.
Yeah.
But on March 3rd, 2022, a week after the war in Ukraine started, you wrote, and I quote, "I've been trying hard to explain my position in 2 words. Putin is a redneck, just like Lukashenko. I hope that all dictators disappear.
Yeah.
Right now, Russian soldiers are not only destroying Ukrainian cities, but also the future of million Russians, Ukrainians, and Belarusians. I stand against this war."
Yeah.
End of quote. Did you stop being apolitical when the war began?
No, it was the riots in Belarus. That was the first such trigger after which I just broke. Let me explain why. I was apolitical because again, it happens slowly. This process is subconscious, injected into you with a syringe over the years, right? You're told, like, don't participate. And it started in the Soviet Union. I was little, I understand. And then the same thing continues, like, don't interfere. There was always such a trick, right? Like, you're an artist. Why are you getting into politics? I'm an artist, but I'm a citizen. I have my own position. Do you understand? And people are deliberately made apolitical so that they don't interfere, make them ignorant, right? That is, if you expressed your position, it is considered as if you were interfering. So just look, take my situation. I've been flying for how long? How old was it when my mom died? Like, well, around like 8 or 9 years, right? So since 2019, I've been coming to Dushanbe like every year. Recently, like whether the biannually. And so they all sit to the TV and they watch the news. For ironically, sometimes they show programs about England. They tell about how the poor English eat squirrels there because they have nothing to eat there and so on.
Were they watching Russian news channels?
Yeah. Well, yeah, my mom is Russian. My dad, he also is a word. Like, they just sit there and watch. So many watch Russian news on post-Soviet TV because they have no other alternatives. Like, they don't know English and so on. You sit there and listen to this. So how does it happen? I sit and I listen, not paying much attention, right? And it's funny to me. And I don't even want to argue with them to tell them, right? That it's all nonsense. Who believes that in England they eat squirrels, right? And how the propaganda works, right? So we discussed this off camera with you. They actually do it very skillfully. They take some excerpt that happened and distort it. So this is what is really scary about such regimes, right? They claim to be a democracy, and then spew out these theses that you sound like they sound really democratic, really. Or take that episode about the squirrels, right? It turns out, and then I became really curious here. In some restaurant here in England, they apparently serve squirrels, most likely in some sort of like a delicacy. So the news channel takes something like this, and this is how I explained it to my dad. Have you ever played knucklebones? Like, so they just put the ball there. The main task of the knucklebone players is to deceive you, right? And so not for you to win. And so they shuffle them all up, and they're like, where's the ball? You say right here, and then they show you, but there was no ball there, and you lost. And they do the same thing. They do this on TV. And moreover, it's impossible for an older person to figure this out. And I am not a politician, right? My task is to sit and make art. But I was just outraged at how this is being done before our eyes. And I was outraged at how my parents are becoming dull. Like, my dad is so well-read, and my mom is an excellent person, but she sits there, and it's important to her to know that in Ukraine there are Nazis, like how they painted all of this. And I was in Kiev. I was in Kharkiv so many times, and I've been to Ukraine so many times. And it's the same story with homosexuality, right? Like, your opinion changes once you start, because you communicate with people and you understand that there was nothing wrong with this. The same thing with Nazis, right? Like, this is complete nonsense. Like, moreover, you listen to people and you understand what this is all about. And well, again, this is not my country, right? Like, let's say Russia. Like, I went there only to do some work. It's not my president, whatever. But well, I was in Belarus many times, right? I was in Belarus 2 or 3 times in Minsk, and I was invited to do wargaming. Belarusians are the coolest guys ever. Again, there is no competition here, like who's the coolest. There's Kazakhs that are cool and all the other nations, but just like, how do I say this right? The general feeling, right? Firstly, they're really kind in general. They're really talented as well. Speaking of wargaming in particular, there's like this mood, right? Like the vibes. You come here in 2013 and they say, well, we have Lukashenko here, and closer to 2019, 2020, like, you already understand that everybody is really tired of him. And I mean, like, really, really tired. And then you already know what happened in 2020, that is, the guy lost the elections but did not want to leave. And he just didn't want to leave. Just didn't want to leave. And then all of these riots began, and then I was just, okay, I got to figure this out for myself, right? Yeah, I already knew this because I communicated closely enough with the guys, with the artists, and so on. A lot of them. And just look, well, you have a lot of episodes where people whose competence, let's say my competence, I can tell you how to apply a shadow in 3D, right? That is my thing. Therefore, I am not the first person who can tell you why these people are not right. But I can tell you one thing. I have always, all my conscious life, disliked people who drag us into the swamp, who tell us into the swamp, and into the past. They tell us all sorts of tales that it was cool in the Soviet Union. They tell us that it was better than before, let's go back. Those before us didn't succeed. But we will do it just fine, and they're taking away our future, right? I'm 44 years old, but there are young people out there, and you look at them, and you understand that they also suffered collateral damage because of all of this. They still absorb it, and their future is taken away from them. And just, in fact, like, look, I wrote 2 years ago, they're taking away our future. Just look, people who did not want to leave there were forced to leave. I understand the people that did not want to leave, and they liked it in Russia. And Russia is cool territorially, right? Belarus is a beautiful country, so why should someone leave? And I don't support this 100%. Not 100%, right? Like, I don't like the fact that, like, in many post-Soviet countries, there is this trick. Like, when they track the past, let's just move forward, we have our own way. But we can learn so much from each other, and I just don't understand why. I understand why this is done, and they don't want to leave.
It's the same in Tajikistan.
It is? Do you want them to put me in prison?
Look, if you're still visiting Tajikistan, then I wouldn't like to compromise you.
I still go to Tajikistan, but it seems to me that they will question me nevertheless. They will say, so what did you mean by that? Like in Belarus, you didn't say it, but you thought it. Yeah. You guys listen, I root to the future, and the future comes through knowledge. That is, you need to invest in knowledge. You said that there are other super IT specialists in Russia. We also have our own talents in our country, right? Like, we have a post-Soviet school, like many IT specialists. Give us a chance. give us a chance to invest in our country, to open up new schools, to create social programs, etc. But there is one problem with this. When a person gets an education, he starts to ask questions, He realizes something isn't adding up.
The president of Tajikistan hasn't changed in 30 years.
I didn't say that.
Oh, I said that.
Okay.
Let's talk about money.
Yeah.
I've read an article about you in Forbes Russia. Here's how they evaluate your income. First, they claim that your online school brings you half of your income. How true is that?
It depends. Sometimes I do one course and sometimes I can do 2 or 3. It depends, So here you know how Forbes works. They make their own arguments. There are not figures that I offer.
I kind of know that
Because of this, the fate of my Kyrgyz friends was ruined. I have a friend in Kyrgyzstan, and for 4 years, he had been trying to understand, was this true or not? He first wrote to me on Facebook, "Oh, Kaldar, hello, if you watch this." And then he asked me in person last year. He says to me, "Come on, just tell me I can't sleep well." In this comic sense.
Forbes claimed that an employee of your level, we're talking strictly about occupation, all right?
Yeah.
So a concept artist of your level would make $400,000 a year.
Yeah. It's
Easily?
True. Easily.
Is this close to the real numbers?
Yeah, it is.
Can you make the same amount from online school?
Yeah, but from both online school and side projects.
So according to Forbes, making $800,000 annually is quite possible.
It's possible, but you see, since there have been so many new tools for earning money, like NFTs, like artists can convert their works, right? But it is work. You see, people just don't understand when they think, oh, you made some sort of a picture, why are you paid so much? Because you know a lot. You understand how to make a composition, how to make lighting, how to apply it all properly. And at the same time, you understand how design works. You understand history, how to make it so that the director likes it. It's a whole complex of things. So when you start explaining this to people, then they can roughly understand, right? So if you were to ask me, why didn't I get into NFTs? Right? The reason is simple. I don't have time. Because you should be committed. People think, I'll just draw a picture and then sell it. But no, you have to promote it. For example, Mike Beeple. We know each other, right? So he often buys our assets that we make, that we scan, and then use them in his collections, right? But at the same time, our assets cost not so much, and his worst cost, for yourself.
This is the guy who's making the most money on the NFT market.
We have been friends with him even before he became an NFT celebrity, right? But it's a huge job. The guy posted on a daily basis for so many years, and every day he had to do work. Imagine just doing graphics every day. Me personally, not only that I don't have enough time, but sometimes I'm physically exhausted. Sometimes I'm exhausted emotionally. You just can't make it yourself to it. And he did it. Therefore, behind every X amount of money earned stands an enormous work.
Have you ever made $1 million in 1 year?
It's possible.
Artificial intelligence. So you said that this is one of the key problems of humanity, or rather the humanity is facing. And you mentioned it along with climate change issues. Why do you think AI is a problem?
This is a huge problem. Just look, in the sense that this is a problem of about the same format, like if you were to simplify it roughly, right? Just take the industry. What is it called correctly? Horse. How do you call it? A horse industry, right? Even if you just look at the pictures, the beginning of the 19th, 20th century, right?
The team.
The end of the 19th, the beginning of the 20th. So you look at it, the horse industry was immense. It was completely immense. There were these carriages themselves. There were these people who looked after them. Even if you did notice, for example, in London there are a lot of what do they call it? Mews. There are these high parade entrances, but I assume that they used to be stables, right? And now they're these super expensive hipster houses. That is there was once this huge industry feed, how is it? Care and maintenance. It's all
a multi-million market.
Yeah. And one day it just disappears because cars were made. You understand, right? That is, we are making a technological leap here. So one day it happens, the tools allow you to do things faster. That is, why do you need a horse that shits and so on? Yeah, I just imagine myself as an artist in the form of a horse. Just look. And now with AI, it's the same thing. That is, we are making a technological leap here. Before, in order to draw, for example, a bundle of grass, you had to know how, understand how to draw, how to transfer color. In fact, it is not so easy to draw grass because it is semi-transparent. This is complex. It shines through the color and scatters it, just like a softbox. And now you just say, hey, draw me grass, and it draws it for you.
Are you using AI?
I use it, yeah. Just look. I look at it from the point of I look at it this way. I can't influence it to not exist. AI will be there in one way or another. It's being implemented. So there's another thing. Just look. I don't agree with how they programmed it, right? That is, the artist's objection is not about how we can use it. I know that how it can be used, but I know how we can. But how they, for research purposes, they first threw in 1 billion images without asking anyone, and then they just programmed it to then create models, I guess. And then they're like, no, we have a model. Now it can be sold and used for money. So in essence, my works, billions of works of other artists, ended up there for free. So imagine you create Spotify and say, I'm not paying anyone for using their materials.
Well, this is unfair.
It's unfair, yeah. So again, there are lawsuits because it's some kind of black box. No one knows how to properly regulate it.
Are they suing? Because of copyright.
So suppose we, as concept artists, have gathered a case, right? Each of us contributed. So suppose we have funded a campaign through GoFundMe where guys in the States promote our rights through the Senate, and that is, they have a case. This is what I'm talking about. What I am against even in political questions, right? So you should have a megaphone. When your megaphone is taken away, you can't do anything. At least we have a megaphone here. We have some sort of tools. We are trying to influence
What are you trying to achieve?
They are now suing the company Stable Diffusion specifically to secure rights for artists against, so that they're not used without consent.
All right, but what's the deal? I mean, they already have your image in their database.
Correct.
Do you want them to remove it, or do you want to get a compensation?
I think it seems more realistic to me that we receive compensation, but damn, you see, it's complicated. You can't untrain the data. It's already done. That is, it's like, you've squeezed the toothpaste out of the tube. So just look. There was a screenwriter's strike, right? One of their goals was the regulation of AI, and they achieved it because, in essence, it also affected them. You can go to ChatGPT, and it can provide you anything. But at the same time, just look, going back, I can't. Okay, so let's go back. I cannot influence this in any way except for these lawsuits. Just suppose I donated. I don't understand this because I don't understand the legal aspect at all. They are doing their job, and I somehow hope that it's going to be fine. But there are positive aspects, right? Suppose, for example, what I've mentioned. There are things in my work that take a lot of time and have to be done manually, you see? Unfortunately, this will kill many jobs. Suppose there are artists who maybe don't do such creative work, but at the same time, it's important nonetheless. They draw backgrounds and so on, and now you use AI and that's it. But just look, maybe in 5 years, I will watch this video and think that I was deeply mistaken. You know what I mean? But for now, I judge based on my impression. I guess, not my feeling. AI imitates amazingly. If you say, I want to see you're a dude, but give him some sort of Tajik national peculiarities, and he'll be like, because he has both inputs, right? He'll mix it up for you. But AI, it's great at imitation, but at the same time, it can't really create something new like we can. So when you can counter-argue and say, but if you put this new thing in there, then it will be also able to create something new. But here you see, it's like the chicken and the egg. We do something new, we put it in there. It's most likely we will fight for these rights. Do you understand? That is, we don't untrain the data, but we say what we do belongs to us. And if you want to train a model on it, then
purchase a license.
Purchase a license. Yeah.
Among all other devices, there is a 3D scanner in this room. You're scanning pretty much everything with it, including characters.
I do.
Human-like. You do that to create a character and then transfer them to an image. Yeah. Can we scan me too?
Yeah, definitely. So here, I have a turntable. Just look, I don't really just scan characters. Suppose I'm working on a character, right? I need a character in dirty boots. I can model these boots, but it takes a lot of time. So I go out, I buy the boots, I put them on, I walk in the park, I walk through the puddles, right? And make them really dirty. I do what I can. So I come here and then I scan them and I get a completely natural look. Because my task is not to prove that I can make something from scratch. My task is to create the final product, right? And although the final product may not be about the boots, but about the character.
And you may use any tools you want to deliver a product.
So it's actually simple. You stand still. Right there, I have a remote for the turntable. I turn it on. The only thing is I need to ask you...
Is that a steamer?
Well, no, this is an iron. So,
okay.
Do you have any special reaction to flashes?
I don't.
Epilepsy, maybe? Or?
No, I can close my eyes.
So it's important to ask because I wouldn't want you to fall back here. So let's press the button. What's happening? It will now show us this preview. That is, you see how a piece of you turns into 3D, and I'm charting you up. And so here Yura goes. And I start the machine. Here's Yura being scanned. So I need to see what's happening there.
I kind of like it. I mean, I do nothing and things happen.
Got it. Okay, so let's see what we got here. It is after we first ran it, it connected the missing pieces there. Then, as you can see, there are many floating things around here. I will just remove a couple of them. And here, and then, I hope. This can take a lot of time. What it does now, it's converting the point cloud. That's what we call it, into real geometry that can then be exported, and we can apply any kind of lighting to it.
Look, how much time would it take you, and how interesting do you think it would be? And would you be willing to take on the task of creating a character from this? Not right now, because there's definitely not enough time for that. For example, would you try to make a character out of this?
Yeah, so we can turn you into some sort of creature from some strange planet.
Whoa.
Here, I have my favorite is Baba Freak. Do you know who that is? He's so small. He's like this, like from the 9th movie, I think.
Yeah, okay.
Just look, we can turn you into anything. It's not fast, though, because just look, this is not about the tools here. The problem is that I need to understand what makes you Yura dude. So I need to communicate emotionally with you, right? Because the way you react is, it's not conveyed through statics, you understand? I need to sit there and make a caricature, sort of. Well, I've already noticed a couple of your features, like what kind of teeth you have there. Don't get me wrong, I'm just as an artist, I immediately see an image, you know what I mean? So when they say to me, oh, wow, how do you come up with such monsters? I say, well, I had a neighbor in Tajikistan. There you go. Yura.
And the final question.
Yeah.
What is power?
Power lies in mutual respect. Because if you respect each other, you will build your relationships differently with anyone. A person who respects will not cut in line, will not use illegal or prohibited methods to push himself forward. That's why I've been so lucky, and I love my profession so much. Because in my career, I've never had to offend anyone to advance in this hierarchy or to succeed at someone else's expense. You know, I've always tried to use this respect that I have, and I believe that power lies in mutual respect.
Can we respect everyone?
Well, look, if we're talking about how to direct everything into a positive channel, then respect moves us in a positive direction. So that's what it is. On the other hand, are there people who should not be respected? Well, yeah, it depends on their actions, most likely. I don't know. It's somehow difficult for me to summarize all of this, but I try.
All right, well, can we disrespect cannibals?
Oh, definitely, of course, but we're not even talking about them. I think that our whole discussion was about how to make the world a better place. You know what I mean?
Well, there are cannibals out there.
There are cannibals, of course, and it's scary. And the scariest thing is that when these cannibals gain power, they don't want to leave, and they use us, both literally and figuratively, and that's not good. That's not good at all. Suppose I don't make a specific action, right? The measure of my action is not God, not the Constitution or anything else. I just want to respect the rights of other people. Do you remember I once said that my position has changed with regard to transgender people or homosexuals? For example, in my life, I've never broken any cues. It makes me sense, when you in post-Soviet countries, it's a very common thing. You stand in line, a guy just passes by and stands in front of you, right? Because this is all my conflicts at airports and so on revolve around this. It's the same at work. As an artist, I've been lucky enough to never get into such a situation. That's why, for example, I've sometimes asked, why did you leave Tajikistan? The first reason is that there was no industry there. And the second is that I was afraid that I would find myself in a situation where I would have to grovel in front of someone, and I don't know how to do that.